Welcome to the Grow Your Business and Grow Your Wealth podcast with Gary Helt. Gary is an expert in helping business owners put together a plan that will provide a better future for their businesses, themselves, and their families. On the podcast, Gary interviews other professionals who share his vision, and together they share secrets and strategies any business owner can use to build a better financial foundation for your business and your life.
Welcome back to our podcast, and today our guest is Angela Reddock-Wright, who is the founder and managing partner of Reddock Law Group. Welcome, Angela.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So, Angela, what made you decide to get into law?
Well, I knew when I was a junior in college that I wanted to go to law school. I had been an English major, was an English and political science major in college, and considered myself a good writer and a good orator, and was not good at medicine or sciences or math. So I knew medical school or something in the sciences was not for me. So law school just seemed like you can do so much, as a lawyer and advocate, and also the potential of being involved in different, business opportunities and ventures. So all of that was attractive to me.
Now, so, when you were in college, this is kind of what you decided to do. What were your first steps into doing law?
So when I was in law school at UCLA, go Bruins, I did a lot in terms of entertainment law. I took like entertainment law classes, thought that I was, I live in Los Angeles. So, everybody in Los Angeles, some way wants to work in the entertainment industry, so they say. And so I was one of those individuals. And so the year I graduated from law school, the job market was kind of soft across the board and in entertainment in particular. And so I just wanted a job and wanted to get started as a lawyer. And so my first job was with an employment law firm. And day one of working at the firm, I fell in love with employment law and never looked back. And, while I had these kind of distant dreams of being an entertainment attorney, I just loved being an employment lawyer so much that I didn't think twice about it and just kept moving forward. And here I am, going on 27 years later. I've worked exclusively in the area of employment law, which I love.
Great. So what is it about employment law that makes it, I'm going to say, so difficult for people to understand?
Well, it's not that it's difficult to understand. In fact, it's, the principles of employment law, I think, resonate with most of us because we're all, for the most part, employees. Even those of us who run our own business at some point in our lives, most likely we have been an employee, and now if we're running our own business, we may be employers if we have employees. So I think in concept, people understand that there are laws that deal with the hiring of individuals, the separation of individuals, the day-to-day management of individuals. It's just that when those laws are applied to your specific environment, you might raise an eyebrow and say, oh, that doesn't apply to me, or I'm different, or I'm an exception, whether it be you responding as an employee or as an employer. But I think the principles people generally understand, but it's when they kind of impact us directly where we start to raise an eyebrow as to why the law is the way it is sometimes.
Yeah, so as a small business owner, like you said, lots of times people think, oh, this doesn't apply to me, or I'm special. What is it? What are some of the common mistakes that the employer of a small business are making when it comes to, employment law?
Well, first, just not educating themselves on employment laws, whether it be the federal laws or the state laws. Like, I'm in California and have practiced in California my entire career. And in California, in addition to the federal body of, say, anti-discrimination or anti-harassment laws or leave laws, or, a whole plethora of laws that protect individuals in the workplace, in California and in most other states, there are additional laws that add to what the federal law requires. And in California, for example, one big area that many employers are surprised by, particularly small business owners, are kind of the wage and hour laws, where they say that you have to pay an individual certain minimum wage, or you have to ensure that they receive so many breaks throughout the day. And we have this governmental body in California called the California Labor Commissioner, or Department of Industrial Relations, and they oversee the wage and hour laws in California. And when you go before it, so an employee can have a wage and hour issue and not have to file in court. They can go direct to this labor commissioner's office. And what many small business owners especially find surprising is that it's almost what we call a strict scrutiny standard. In the law, what that means is there's no defense to it. Like, if you can't prove that you were paying people the proper wages or providing them the proper breaks, that the California Labor Commissioner almost will not accept any excuse for employers. So I use that as an example to say, employers, when you go into business, is usually for all the right reasons. You have a great service that you want to provide, a great widget that you're producing that you want to get to market, all the right reasons, and you're generally really excited about it. But that excitement has to be matched with education. So having a strong finance person on your team, having a lawyer on your team that will help you navigate these issues, because most employment laws apply. If you only have one employee, they apply, like the anti-discrimination laws. When it comes to some of the other laws, you have to have at least 5 employees. So once you start to get, 1, 5, definitely above 5 individuals working for you, most of these laws apply to you. And it's not until you're sitting before the California Labor Commissioner or some agency like that, that you realize that maybe the way you've been doing things from the beginning, or because you're small, you thought, oh, well, this would, no one would ever sue me, or no one would ever make a claim for me because we're like family and we love each other. So it's in those moments that you're being educated, but it's at that point where, you're facing liability, and that's not a good feeling. So that's the first thing I would say. Educate yourself. In addition to doing whatever you do well and getting that to market, make sure you have the foundational elements in place and team to advise you, so that all of your earnings and profits don't go to servicing lawsuits and legal claims.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that you said that I'm constantly preach is making sure you pick your right team.
Yeah.
And lots of times, again, like everybody else, we start out where it's just us and we're doing everything, and then we do start adding employees, and it does change things. Now, lots of times people are going to say, oh, well, I don't have to worry about it, I don't have any employees. Well, they have contractors. They have what they would call a 1099 employee. Don't these rules still apply to someone who you're saying is they may not truly be a 1099 employee, but that they're saying that, but don't these rules still apply to them also?
They do. And even before a employer or business owner decides to hire someone as a contractor or a 1099, they have to consult with someone so that they know, ideally a lawyer that specializes in these areas, so that they're advised as to whether the person qualifies truly as an independent contractor or as a 1099 contractor. And that is probably one of the biggest missteps of small business owners in particular, but not just small business owners. Like the leading case on this issue was against Microsoft. So for many years, Microsoft, even with this big corporation, hired many of its software engineers and so forth as independent contractors. And after going through years of litigation, the court finally said, no, these are individuals that actually work for you. They're your employees. You can't have just long-term independent contractors that are essentially working for you full time. So what many business owners, especially starting out, they'll say, well, one way I'll save costs is by hiring contractors as opposed to employees. And the way you save costs is you don't have to pay payroll taxes on those individuals. You don't have to worry about meal breaks and rest breaks, etc. But if they are basically working for you full time and doing the service that an actual employee would do for you, that person most likely is not an independent contractor. And so it's not worth taking that risk, because if you get caught or they file a claim later that they've been misclassified for any number of years, that could result in substantial back wages and back pay. That could, result in having to deal with an audit with the IRS for not paying the taxes on that person if they were an employee. And there could be civil penalties associated with it as well. So that is probably the biggest area of potential liability for small business owners in particular. And while it may seem easy and the best way to go about things, in the long run, it rarely serves to your benefit.
Yeah, I have seen people and tried to counsel. I'm not an attorney, but knowing that, hey, this part you're telling them what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and you're providing all the tools and resources for them to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to also explain, besides all the payroll tax and everything else, you have a pension plan that you've set up for yourself.
Right.
Department of Labor can come in and say, hey, you have to pay all this back for them also.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, it's definitely, important. And I know, this much of it compared to what in this. What are some of the other issues with the employment law are kind of the where the work environment and all off business topics that are being talked about and things like that, where people could be made felt uncomfortable. As an employer, we're not always we're most of the time we're not involved with those conversations because we're either out in the field, meetings and different things like that. Many times, the business owner is going to say, well, how am I supposed to control that? I mean, what advice would you have for a business owner for that?
Right, right. Well, so as a part of a business owner's education, if you wanted like sort of an employment law 101 type course, and literally my first boss that I had out of law school did the same thing with me. This all employment laws start with the basic principle that, you cannot discriminate against or retaliate against employees or take any adverse employment action against any individual based on their race, their gender, disability, religion, and, a long litany of other what we call protected categories. So if a business owner kind of takes that as the basic principle of employment law and of employing people, what that means is they're going to look at everything from their hiring policies and practices to their day-to-day management and performance policies, all the way to something like looking at retirement plans, and ensure that everything that they do is fair and equitable across the board, that it doesn't treat individuals differently because of any of these protected categories, and that when issues, for example, arise in the workplace, like you alluded to, like say there alleged sexual harassment comments or alleged comments about race or gender or what have you, that even if that business owner is off building the business, that they have tools in place where individuals who feel harmed in the workplace know that they can make a complaint, whether it be to human resources or to the owner directly or to their manager or to their boss or to 800 line or hotline in some larger companies, wherever that source is, that employees know generally through an employee handbook and through orientation where to make a complaint, and that they have every confidence, the employee does, that when they make that complaint, that it's going to be responded to, looked into, investigated if necessary, and that appropriate action is going to be taken if needed. And if you, as a business owner, get those basic principles, that you start with knowing, in our business, we have to seek to be fair and equitable in everything we do from A to Z. And then when something falls through the cracks, that we have a process to respond to it and to let employees know that they are heard. if business owners have those basic principles in place and practices in place, it doesn't mean you're shielded from liability, but it means that you can catch things early before they escalate, before they turn into a complaint or a lawsuit. And if you could do that, that will play a big role in terms of managing your day-to-day liability in terms of employees. But more than that, and this is kind of my doing this for 27 years now, this is my life's work and my passion. It's not just about managing risk and managing liabilities, right? You know, as I said earlier, we spend so much time at work. And so much of our lives and our happiness and our contentment, et cetera, is driven by what happens at work. So business owners don't only want to have these policies and practices in place just to, shield them from liability, but really to help create great workplaces and to help create places, especially in this climate where we have quiet quitting, quiet firing, nobody wants to go back to work, remote work, not remote work. How are you going to be competitive as a business owner? And from the lens I sit in, the most successful businesses and business owners are those who, when they have employees, where they value their employees, they see their employees as their best investment, investing in their well-being, investing in, their benefits, investing in their pay, and just generally letting employees know that they're valued and they're cared about. And a big part of that is having policies that have teeth and meaning, and letting employees know that when something does occur, that you care enough to respond, to engage, and to take the appropriate action.
Yeah. So if I'm a business owner, I'm just starting up and I'm saying, hey, I really don't have the financial being right now to hire someone like you to make sure that I have everything in place and to I guess teach me the basics so I don't get myself in trouble. What recommendation or what would you say to them?
Right. I'm a big fan of organizations like the federal or the U.S. Small Business Association. They offer a lot of resources and free programming for business owners to educate themselves on issues like this. Also, your local or your state chambers of commerce tend to have a committee or a part of the commerce which educates business owners on legal issues, financial issues, and other issues that impact their day-to-day business. There are organizations like the Society of Human Resources Professionals. So, ideally, if you have an HR person, they're a member of a group like that, so they're getting the additional education they need. But even if you don't have an HR person, as a business person, you can join a group like that and benefit from their seminars and webinars and educational materials and tools. But I would start there if you can't afford to have full-time people or lawyers, at your beck and call. I would start with organizations like that. And also, like in California, I know for sure the government entity that oversees our employment laws, the discrimination harassment laws, is called the California Office of Civil Rights. And they offer regular training and webinars, and will even come to businesses and do training. So look to see if there's an equivalent organization in your state and to see what type of training and information that they offer for business owners.
Thank you. I think lots of times I tell people when they say that, it's more, you can't afford not to do it, is really what it comes down to, because again, there's so many things. We're so busy as business owners trying to be out there to get the new business, to make sure that it's all the work's getting done and everything else, that we lots of times don't take the time to step back and really look at this. The old adage of, we're working in our business instead of on our business.
Yeah. And to that point, Gary, most businesses will get insurance for their business. Even before they go out and hire an accountant or a lawyer, what have you, most businesses recognize the need to have at least basic insurance. One of the policies that's offered to businesses now is called employment practices liability insurance, EPLI. And what that does is it gives you a policy to assist in the event that an employee files a claim for harassment, discrimination, or what have you in the workplace. It generally does not cover wage and hour claims, but it will cover other claims. And with that, if a claim is filed, of course, you get to call the adjuster, get advice on how to manage that claim, but you're also assigned an attorney through your policy. And usually there's like an auto policy, there's a retention amount. And once you pay that retention amount, which can be from $5,000, $10,000, $100,000 for larger companies, but it's well worth it, especially if you're small, because if you have to go out and hire an attorney to deal with litigation, just out the gate, it could cost you $25,000 or so. So that, to your point, that you can't afford not to have it. A way to kind of get into the marketplace is through your insurance policy, and they will help you do things like draft your employee handbook and guide you through some of the basic day-to-day employment policies and practices.
That's good advice. Earlier, you mentioned, which seems to be one of the big topics nowadays, is the quiet quitting. Can you talk about that a little bit? I mean, we've seen and heard a lot of people talk about, it's like, okay, well, our office hours are 8:30 to 5. And, yes, I get my half-hour break, but I'm not showing up at the office until 8:30 and I'm walking out the door at 5. But as the employer, I'm looking at, I'm paying you to do work from 8:30 to 5. So how does that, from the employment law side of it, how does that figure in?
Yeah, exactly as you described it. That quiet quitting is basically where people are still keeping their jobs as opposed to quitting, but they're doing the bare minimum. And it's something that, like many things, has arisen during this COVID-19 pandemic environment, where as people were working remotely or going through major life changes, their perspectives about work started to change, and perspective about what's important to them in life. And so for many, if they perhaps were already not happy with their job, or things that have happened in this 2 to 3 year time period that caused them to be less than satisfied with their job or their employer, they're opting to, take this kind of lesser road of, well, I'll keep collecting a salary or keep collecting pay, but I'm going to do the bare minimum. And that kind of goes to what I was saying earlier. I think that the employers that are going to kind of survive this moment in time and also come out on top are those employees who recognize this is happening, and that whether you like it or not, because in the old days, you say, well, you're getting a paycheck, so you work, right? So people now, they're like, oh, I'm getting a paycheck, so what, right? That's not enough to show employees that they're valued. Having great benefits is not enough. It's really employers showing that they care about their employees, that they value their employees, that they recognize that these last 2 to 3 years have been really traumatic for many individuals. And I think as hard as it is to wrap our heads around that, particularly in American business society, where we work until the core. As hard as it is to wrap our heads around it, it's a reality. It's happening, and we're gonna have to adjust to what I see as the new worker, the worker that there's still people who are willing to commit their time, commit their talents and energies, but they're only willing to do that when they know that they're working for a company or organization that cares about them in the same way that they want the employee to care about the company and its mission and values.
Right. So, but as the employer, when we're dealing with this, if someone, again, it's like, okay, well, these are the hours type thing, and somebody's like literally walking in the door at 8:30, and they're really not. I mean, because again, growing up, I was taught, you're at your desk and you are actually working at 8:30, not
Right.
arriving and turning on your
Time you're late.
getting your
Like,
coffee and all that kind of stuff. You're there, physically working at that time. How does
mhm.
from the employment side, how does that work from the law side, I guess I should say?
Yeah, well, employers can deal with it as a performance management issue, right? If someone literally is not doing their job, not, showing, I mean, on time, I don't know if you can do too much about that other than just kind of counsel the employee like, hey, you really want to be ready to go at 8:30, not just walking in the door at 8:30, but definitely, treating it as a performance, management issue. And it has to start with making sure you have good job descriptions in place so that an expectation has been set for what's expected of the employee. And then coaching the employee, it's one thing to just hit the hammer, right? That
Yeah.
tends not to motivate people, but coaching them and letting the employee know that they're vital to the success of the company or the organization, and that when one spoke in the wheel is not quite working, then it impacts the rest of the spokes. And even incentivizing employees to, whether it be, if you do better or if you get on a good pathway, this could lead to promotional opportunities or other opportunities, or we could expand your portfolio. So I think it has to be, like a parent in a way where you're definitely, strict in terms of holding your children to a certain standard, but you're also recognizing, you're mixing that with a little softness, in the interest of kind of acknowledging that, like I said, for these last 2+ years, things have been traumatic for some people. But yeah, should you just not manage that? Of course not, because that creates chaos in the workplace. But managing it in a way that ideally, motivates and incentivizes and engages the employee in a positive way.
Yeah, because I think lots of times, that can be almost like a poison if you don't address it, because
Yeah,
you have the employees that are doing things the way that you want and performing in the manner that you want. And then you have this one or two people who aren't. And then that kind of, uh, there's some resentment there because, okay, why are you letting them do this when I'm following what the rules are? So
that's
I
very
think lots of
true.
times that happens quite often.
Very, very true.
All right, Angela, we could probably go on for another 6 hours because this is a huge topic, and in my opinion, when you're an employer, just trying to make sure that you're doing things in the right way. And like you said earlier, it's not necessarily just protecting yourself, but it's investing in the employees and getting people that are working with you, showing them that you care. And then lots of times, they're going to care about, what they're doing and what the mission of the business is.
Right.
Um, what have I not asked you that you wish I did?
I think you did a great job, Gary, but maybe I could just give a little more clarity and also suggest something about conflict resolution, which I'm really passionate about. So I've been, like I said, been practicing almost 27 years. For the first 15 years of my career, I represented clients in all aspects of employment law. The last 11 years, I've been full time as a mediator and arbitrator. I work in the world of dispute resolution, trying and conflict resolution, helping employers and employees to resolve issues outside of court, litigated matters generally. So I would just say to employers and employees alike that, conflict resolution, dispute resolution is a great way to go if you find yourself involved in protracted or costly litigation, which takes you away from your business, takes the employee away, emotionally as well. That, conflict resolution, and I'm encouraging companies to build conflict resolution into their day-to-day protocols and their day-to-day way of doing business. Like I said earlier, catching issues on the front end showing you're committed to those issues and dealing with them in the moment. And sometimes that requires bringing in an outside facilitator, outside expert in conflict resolution. But your team can also be trained and empowered to engage in day-to-day conflict resolution. It works. I'm a big fan of it. Not just because that's what I do, but because I see the worst of scenarios, and when it's oftentimes too hard to resolve it through dispute resolution or conflict resolution, although we do every day. But I see the worst case scenarios, and I'm saying before you get to those worst case scenarios, try to get on top of it beforehand. It's worth it to your business, it's worth it to the morale of your team, and it's not as costly as finding yourself in long protracted litigation. And our court systems are really backed up right now, and so it also helps to relieve some of the pressure and stress on the court system.
Right. That's great advice there too. I mean, and I'm going to say that doesn't work just at work. It works at home too, right?
Oh, yes. At home, with your kids, with your family, with your friends.
Right, exactly.
Yes, we all should do a daily practice of conflict resolution.
Right. So, Angela, if people like what they hear, and you've given us a lot of good advice on places for people to go, in their own states of where to look for help. But if somebody wants to reach out to you and talk to you, how can they get in touch with you?
Follow me on I am Angela Reddock-Wright on Instagram and Facebook. I host a weekly legal show on KBLA Talk 1580 called Legal Lens with Angela. That comes on every Saturday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So if you follow me on Facebook or Instagram, you can see who I'm having on the show. My specialty is employment law, but I bring on, lawyers who are experts in all sorts of issues. So that's a great place to hear other areas of law. You can also follow me on LinkedIn, see what I'm talking about in the areas of employment law and mediation and dispute resolution. And on LinkedIn, I'm under my own name, Angela Reddock-Wright.
Great. Angela, we really appreciate your time today.
And I have a book. I forgot, The Workplace Transformed, which talks about workplaces and transformed and what businesses, employers, and employees alike should be thinking about in this post-COVID-19 world. And you can find out about that and all my other projects on my website at angelareddock.com.
Great. Again, thank you very much for your time. I think you've given us a lot to think about. And anybody who's out there that doesn't have an employment attorney as part of their team really needs to look to find one in their state that can help them with what their possible employment law issues could be, just for the help. So this week our guest was Angela Reddock-Wright, and she's a founder and managing partner of Reddock Law Group. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.
This show has been produced by Market Domination, LLC. To discover how you can have your own show completely done for you and turn it into a real published book and become the authority in your marketplace, go to www.marketdominationllc.com/podcast offer.